The impossible boss, the glass towers of downtown, reflected the morning sun like mirrors of judgment, and nowhere was this more fitting than at Blackwood Industries. On the 42nd floor, behind mahogany doors that had witnessed more tears than triumphs, sat Roman Blackwood. His reputation preceded him like a storm cloud, dark and foreboding. Helena Martinez, HR manager, sat across from her assistant with a look of defeat that had become permanent over the past 6 months. "Another one quit," she announced, sliding a resignation letter across the desk. "Secretary number 12 this year." The assistant, a young man named Tom, barely looked up from his computer. How long did this one last? 2 weeks and 3 days? She cited impossible working conditions and psychological trauma in her resignation. Roman Blackwood had built his empire on precision, excellence, and an absolute intolerance for mediocrity. At 34, he commanded respect through fear rather than admiration. His steel-gray eyes could freeze a boardroom with a single glance, and his voice carried the weight of authority that made grown men tremble. The secretaries came and went like seasons, each believing they could be the one to tame the beast. They arrived with confidence and departed with therapy recommendations. Mrs. Patterson had held the record at 3 weeks, but she developed a nervous tic that made her jump every time the phone rang. 3 floors below, in a coffee shop that had become her temporary office, Olivia Rose stared at her laptop screen with growing desperation. Rejection email after rejection email filled her inbox. Each one was a polite variation of "thank you for your interest, but we've decided to pursue other candidates." At 26, Olivia had dreams bigger than her bank account. She wanted to be a writer, to craft stories that would move people and change minds. But dreams didn't pay rent, and her landlord had made it clear that inspiration wasn't legal tender. Her friend Rachel slid into the seat across from her, carrying 2 steaming cups. "Any luck today?" Olivia shook her head, accepting the coffee gratefully. "I'm starting to think I'm cursed, given the receptionist position at that dental office." Went to someone else. "What about that posting for Blackwood Industries? Executive assistant position? Are you insane?" Olivia nearly choked on her coffee. "That's Roman Blackwood. He's legendary for destroying assistants. I heard he made one woman cry so hard she had to be hospitalized for dehydration." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like an exaggeration." "Trust me, it's not. Besides, I'd never get the job anyway. I have 0 corporate experience." But as Olivia looked at her dwindling savings account and the stack of unpaid bills in her purse, desperation began to outweigh fear. Maybe, just maybe, she could be different. Maybe she could survive where others had failed. That evening, in her small apartment with its leaky faucet and temperamental heating, Olivia crafted what she knew might be her last job application. She poured her heart into the cover letter, writing with the same passion she brought to her. "Stories. Dear Mr. Blackwood," she began, "I understand you're looking for an executive assistant. I also understand that this position comes with unique challenges. While I may not have traditional corporate experience, I have something more valuable: the ability to adapt, learn, and persevere under pressure." She went on to describe her freelance writing work, her ability to manage multiple deadlines, and her experience dealing with difficult clients. What she didn't mention was her tendency to be clumsy when nervous, her habit of speaking before thinking, or her complete inability to navigate office politics. At midnight, she hit send and immediately regretted it. But it was too late to take back her application to work for the most feared man in the city. The call came at 7 in the morning, 3 days later. Olivia was still in her pajamas, half asleep, and completely unprepared. "Ms. Rose, this is Helena Martinez from Blackwood Industries. Mr. Blackwood would like to schedule an interview for the executive assistant position." Olivia nearly dropped the phone. "He wants to interview me. Can you be here at 2 o'clock today?" "Today?" Olivia's voice cracked. "I mean, yes, absolutely. I'll be there." She hung up. Reality crashed over her like a cold wave. She was going to interview with Roman Blackwood. She was either very brave or very stupid, and at this point, the distinction didn't matter. Olivia spent the morning in a frenzy of preparation. She borrowed a conservative black suit from her sister, practiced walking in heels she'd rarely worn, and rehearsed answers to potential questions. But nothing could have prepared her for the reality of Blackwood Industries. The building was a monument to success and intimidation. Gleamed with polished marble and modern art that probably cost more than most people's salaries. Employees moved with purpose and fear, their conversations conducted in hushed tones as if speaking too loudly might summon their terrifying boss. At the reception desk, a woman with perfect posture and a practiced smile directed her to the elevators. 42nd floor. Helena Martinez will meet you there. The elevator ride felt like an eternity. Olivia checked her reflection in the polished steel doors, trying to tame a stubborn curl that had escaped her carefully constructed bun. Her palms were sweating, and she could feel her heart beating against her ribs like a trapped bird. Elevator doors opened to reveal a hallway that screamed expensive taste and quiet efficiency. Olivia stepped out, immediately overwhelmed by the hushed atmosphere and the weight of expectation that seemed to hang in the air like incense. She was so focused on not tripping in her borrowed heels that she didn't notice the man striding toward her until it was too late. The collision was inevitable, and physics dictated that her large coffee would find its target with unerring accuracy. The steaming liquid splashed across an impeccably tailored charcoal suit, staining the crisp white shirt beneath. Time seemed to freeze as Olivia watched the dark stains spread across the expensive fabric, her brain struggling to process the magnitude of her mistake. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she gasped, fumbling in her purse for tissues that she knew wouldn't be adequate for this disaster. "I'm such an idiot. Let me help you clean that." When she finally looked up, she found herself staring into the most intense gray eyes she'd ever seen. They belonged to a man who was devastatingly handsome in a way that made her breath catch. Despite the fury she could see building in his expression. "I assume you're here for the interview," he said, his voice carrying an arctic chill that made her shiver. "You're Roman Blackwood," she said, the words falling from her lips like stones into still water. "Indeed I am. And you are Olivia Rose. Your worst nightmare, apparently." Something flickered across his features. Surprise, maybe, or annoyance. It was impossible to tell with a man who seemed to have been carved from stone. "Follow me," he commanded, turning on his heel and striding toward a set of double doors at the end of the hallway. Roman's office was a study in controlled power. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a commanding view of the city, while the furniture was arranged to create subtle psychological advantages. Everything was designed to make visitors feel small and insignificant. Be intimidated by the decor. She was too busy trying to figure out how to salvage what had to be the worst job interview in history. "Sit," Roman instructed, settling behind his massive desk with movements that were both fluid and precise. Olivia perched on the edge of the chair, her posture rigid with nervousness. "Mr. Blackwood, I want to apologize again for the coffee incident. No first impressions are important, and I've obviously failed spectacularly. Why should I hire you?" he asked, ignoring her apology entirely. The question caught her off guard. She'd expected anger, dismissal, maybe even security being called. She hadn't expected him to proceed with the interview as if nothing had happened. "'Cause I'm not easily intimidated," she said, the words coming out before she could stop them. "And because I won't quit after 2 weeks like all the others." His eyebrows rose slightly. "You know about my previous assistants? Everyone knows about your previous assistants? The question is, do you know why they all left?" It was a bold question, bordering on insolent, but something in his expression made her continue. "They left because they were trying to be perfect, and perfect isn't sustainable. I'm not perfect, Mr. Blackwood. I spill coffee, I speak my mind, and I make mistakes. But I also learn from them, and I don't give up." The test Roman leaned back in his chair, studying her with those penetrating gray eyes. "What makes you think you're different? 'Cause I need this job more than I fear you." The admission hung between them like a confession. Olivia immediately regretted her honesty, but she couldn't take the words back now. "I need someone who can handle pressure," Roman said finally. "Someone who won't crumble under criticism or run crying to HR every time I raise my voice." "I can handle pressure. I've been handling it my whole life. The hours are long, the work is demanding. I expect perfection, in execution. Even if you claim not to be perfect yourself, I understand. Do you? He stood up, moving around the desk to stand directly in front of her. Because 12 women have sat in that exact chair, claiming they understood, only to quit within a month. Olivia rose to face him, her chin lifting defiantly. Maybe you weren't asking the right questions. What questions should I be asking? Ask me if I'm willing to work late nights to get the job done. Ask me if I can handle criticism without taking it personally. Ask me if I'm smart enough to learn your preferences and organized enough to anticipate your needs. Can you? I can, and I will. Roman studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. You start Monday, 8 o'clock sharp. Don't be late. Olivia blinked, certain she'd misheard. Sorry. What, you're hired, Miss Rose? Try not to spill. Anything else on your way out? Monday morning arrived with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. Olivia stood outside the Blackwood Industries building at 7:45, clutching a travel mug of coffee with a secure lid and trying to calm her racing heart. She'd spent the weekend researching everything she could about Roman Blackwood and his company. What she'd found painted a picture of a man who was brilliant, ruthless, and completely dedicated to his work. He'd built his empire from nothing, transforming a small investment firm into a multinational corporation through sheer force of will and an unwavering commitment to excellence. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt different this time. She was no longer a nervous applicant. She was Roman Blackwood's new assistant. The weight of that responsibility settled on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. Helena Martinez met her at the elevator with a mixture of sympathy and curiosity. So, you're the one who survived the coffee incident? Survived is a strong word, Olivia replied. Still not sure what happened. What happened? Helena said, leading Olivia to a desk positioned strategically outside Roman's office. Is that you're the first person in 6 months to stand up to him instead of cowering? He respects strength, even when it comes in an unconventional package. The desk was equipped with everything she could possibly need: a state-of-the-art computer, multiple phone lines, and a stack of files that looked intimidating enough to fell a small tree. Helena spent the next hour explaining the systems, the protocols, and the countless ways she could accidentally trigger Roman's wrath. He drinks his coffee black, no sugar, takes lunch at his desk, unless he has a client meeting, hates interruptions. During his morning review, which happens from 8 to 9:30, and whatever you do, never, ever reschedule a meeting without his explicit approval. At exactly 8 o'clock, Roman strode through the office doors. He moved with the confidence of a man who owned everything he surveyed, his presence commanding attention from every person in the vicinity. He paused at Olivia's desk, his gray eyes assessing her with the same intensity he'd shown during the interview. Miss Rose, I trust you're ready to begin. Absolutely, Mr. Blackwood, he dropped. A thick folder on her desk. I need these contracts reviewed and summarized by 10. The Hartwell meeting has been moved to 11:30. Cancel my lunch with Morrison and reschedule it for Thursday. And get me David Chen on the phone. Without waiting for a response, he disappeared into his office, leaving Olivia staring at the closed door with a mixture of determination and terror. The morning passed in a blur of phone calls, emails, and frantic note-taking. Roman's expectations were impossibly high, but Olivia found herself rising to meet them. She discovered that beneath his intimidating exterior was a man who appreciated efficiency and competence above all else. When she brought him his coffee at 9:15, he didn't look up from his computer. The Morrison meeting. I specifically said Thursday. I know, sir. I scheduled it for Thursday at 2 o'clock. I also took the liberty of confirming the restaurant reservation and arranging for your car to pick you up 15 minutes early, given the traffic patterns downtown. Roman's fingers paused over his keyboard. He looked up at her with something that might have been surprise. You arranged for the car. I noticed in your calendar that you prefer to arrive 5 minutes early to all meetings. The traffic report showed potential delays on the usual route, so I coordinated with your driver to use the alternate path through the financial district. For the first time since she'd met him, Roman Blackwood almost smiled. Almost. Acceptable. Miss Rose, the contracts? On your desk, sir? I've highlighted the key clauses and attached my summary notes. He flipped through the documents, his expression growing more impressed with each page. These are quite thorough. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet. We're just getting started. The breakthrough, 3 weeks into her employment, Olivia had settled into a rhythm that would have killed lesser mortals. Now she arrived at 7:30 each morning, stayed until Roman left for the evening, and spent her weekends studying industry reports to better anticipate his needs. But something unexpected was happening. The man who had terrified 12 previous assistants was beginning to show glimpses of humanity. It started with small things. A brief nod of approval when she handled a difficult client, a moment of hesitation. Before delivering criticism, the way his voice softened almost imperceptibly when he said her name. "Miss Rose?" he called from his office one particularly hectic Tuesday afternoon. "I need you to." The sound of her chair hitting the floor interrupted him. Olivia had stood up too quickly, dizzy from skipping lunch again, and knocked over. Her coffee in the process, liquid spread across her desk, threatening to destroy the important documents she'd been organizing. "Oh, no," she muttered, frantically trying to save the papers while simultaneously reaching for napkins. Roman appeared in his doorway, taking in the scene with his usual stoic expression. But instead of the explosive anger she expected, he walked calmly to her desk and began helping her move the documents to safety. "When did you last eat?" he asked, his tone surprisingly gentle. "I had breakfast," she said, not meeting his eyes. "That was 9 hours ago." He studied her face, noting the pale complexion and the slight tremor in her hands. "Sit down. I'm fine, really. I just need to Miss Rose. Sit down." The authority in his voice brooked no argument. Olivia sank into her chair, feeling foolish and vulnerable. Roman disappeared into his office and returned with a protein bar and a bottle of water. "Eat," he commanded, placing them in front of her. "Mr. Blackwood, I appreciate the concern, but I'm perfectly capable of what? Fainting at your desk? Ruining important documents because you're too stubborn to take care of yourself?" His voice carried its usual edge, but there was something else there. Something that sounded almost like worry. Olivia unwrapped the protein bar, her pride stinging. "I was trying to finish the Morrison proposal before the deadline. The Morrison proposal isn't due until Friday. I know, but I wanted to have it ready early in case you needed revisions." Roman was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those penetrating gray eyes. "Miss Rose, may I ask you something?" "Of course. Why do you work so hard?" "Don't tell me it's because you need the job. Half the city needs a job. You work as if your life depends on it." Olivia hesitated, unsure how much honesty her boss could handle. "Because I want to prove that I belong here, and that I'm not just another secretary waiting to quit. I want to show you that your faith in me wasn't misplaced." "My faith in you?" "You hired me after I spilled coffee on you and questioned your management style. That was either faith or temporary insanity." The corner of Roman's mouth twitched. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was close. Perhaps it was both. They looked at each other for a moment, something shifting in the air between them. Then Roman cleared his throat and stepped back, his professional mask sliding back into place. "Take an hour for lunch." "That's an order, not a request. But the Morrison proposal will be here when you get back. Go, Miss Rose, before I change my mind." That evening, as Olivia was packing up her desk, Roman emerged from his office, carrying his briefcase and jacket. "Miss Rose, do you have dinner plans?" The question caught her off guard. "Dinner plans?" "Yeah. I'm meeting with the Hartwell team at Giovanni's to discuss the merger. I could use someone there to take notes and handle the logistics." It was a business dinner, nothing more. But the way he asked, the slight uncertainty in his voice, made her wonder if there was more to the invitation than professional necessity. "I'd be happy to join you," she said. "Good, we'll leave in 15 minutes. Giovanni's was the kind of restaurant where politicians made deals and billionaires discussed acquisitions. The lighting was dim, the atmosphere intimate, and the prices astronomical. Olivia felt underdressed in her conservative work attire, but Roman seemed not to notice. The dinner was a success from a business perspective. The Hartwell team was impressed by Roman's vision and Olivia's meticulous attention to detail. But what surprised her was how different Roman was in this setting. He was still commanding, still brilliant, but there was a warmth to his interactions that she rarely saw in the office. "You were excellent tonight," he said, as they waited for the valet to bring his car around. "Thank you." The Hartwell team seems genuinely interested in the merger. They are. Thanks, in large part, to your preparation. The presentation materials you put together were flawless. Olivia felt a warmth spread through her chest. Praise from Roman Blackwood was rarer than diamonds and twice as valuable. "Mr. Blackwood," she said as they drove through the city streets, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why do you work so hard? What drives you to push yourself and everyone around you to such extremes?" Roman was quiet for so long that she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. "'Cause I learned early that excellence is the only thing that matters. That anything less than perfection is failure, and failure has consequences." "What kind of consequences?" "The kind that destroy everything you've built, the kind that leave you with nothing but regret and the knowledge that you could have done better." There was pain in his voice, old and deep. Olivia wanted to ask more, to understand what had shaped him into the man he was, but something in his expression warned her that she'd pushed far enough for one evening. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "For what?" "For whatever happened to make—" "You believe that? For the pressure you put on yourself? For the way you think you have to be perfect all the time?" Roman pulled up in front of her apartment building and turned to look at her. His gray eyes were intense, searching, as if he were trying to read her soul. "Thank you, Miss Rose. For tonight. For everything." "You're welcome, Mr. Blackwood." She started to get out of the car, then paused. "Roman, I." It was the first time she'd used his first name, and the sound of it seemed to startle them both. "Yes, you don't have to be perfect. Not with me." She got out of the car before he could respond, but she could feel his eyes on her as she walked to her building. Something had changed between them that night. Something that went beyond the professional relationship they'd carefully maintained. As she watched his car disappear into the night, Olivia realized that she was falling for her impossible boss. And that was the most dangerous thing that could happen to either of them. The truth the next morning brought an unexpected crisis. Olivia arrived at the office to find Roman pacing behind his desk, his usually perfect appearance disheveled. His hair was mussed, his tie askew, and there were dark circles under his eyes. "Miss Rose, thank God you're here. We have a problem." "Kind of problem?" "The Hartwell deal. Once someone leaked information about the merger to the press. The stock prices are in chaos, and the board is demanding answers." Olivia immediately shifted into crisis mode. "What do you need me to do?" "I need you to get Harold Morrison on the phone. Cancel all my meetings for the day, and find out who had access to the merger documents." The day passed in a blur of damage control. Olivia fielded calls from reporters, coordinated with the legal team. They managed to keep Roman's schedule clear so he could focus on containing the crisis. She watched him work with a mixture of admiration and concern, noting how the stress was taking its toll. By evening, they had managed to stabilize the situation. The leak had been traced to a junior employee who had been feeding information to a competitor. The employee had been terminated, and the legal team was pursuing action. "For corporate espionage, we did it," Roman said, sinking into his chair with exhaustion. "The merger is back on track." "You did it," Olivia corrected. "I just answered phones and brought coffee. You did much more than that. You kept everything running while I was putting out fires. I couldn't have managed without you." There was something in his voice that made her look up from her computer. Roman was watching her with an expression she'd never seen before. Soft, grateful, and something else that made her heart skip. "Miss Rose, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I've been thinking about what you said last night. About not having to be perfect. About the pressure I put on myself and others." Olivia felt her pulse quicken. "And you were right. I have been trying to be perfect. I've been so afraid of failure that I've forgotten what it means to be human." He stood up and walked around the desk, stopping just in front of her chair. "I've been afraid of letting people close because closeness means vulnerability. And vulnerability means the possibility of being hurt." "Roman," she said softly, using his first name again. "I've had 12 assistants quit because I was too afraid to let them see who I really am. Too afraid to admit that I'm not the machine everyone thinks I am." "Who are you then?" "I'm a man who built walls so high that I forgot how to let anyone in. I'm someone who convinced himself that being alone was safer than taking chances. Olivia stood up, closing the distance between them. And now? Now I'm terrified because I care about someone more than I care about my reputation. More than. I care about appearing strong or in control, Roman, she whispered. I'm in love with you, Olivia. I've been falling since the moment you spilled coffee on me and refused to be intimidated. I've been falling since you questioned my methods and challenged my assumptions. I've been falling since you showed me that strength isn't about being perfect, it's about being brave enough to be real. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. I love you too, you do. The vulnerability in his voice was heartbreaking. I've been fighting it for weeks, told myself it was just gratitude for the job, or admiration for your brilliance. But it's more than that. It's the way you push yourself to be better. It's the way you care about your work and your employees, even when you pretend not to. It's the man I see when you think no one is watching. Roman reached up and touched her face, his fingers gentle against her cheek. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be in a relationship with someone who works for me. I don't know how to balance what I feel for you with what's expected of me. We'll figure it out, Olivia said, leaning into his touch. Together. What if it doesn't work? What if I hurt you? What if I... She silenced him with a kiss, soft and sure, and full of promise. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. What if it does work? She whispered against his lips. What if we're brave enough to try? Roman smiled then, a real smile that transformed his entire face. Then I guess we'll find out what happens when the impossible boss meets the woman, who refuses to quit. I love you, she said again, because the words felt like freedom. I love you too, he replied, and for the first time in years, Roman Blackwood wasn't afraid of the future. 6 months later, Olivia Rose became Olivia Blackwood in a ceremony that was small, intimate, and perfect in every way that mattered. Helena Martinez served as maid of honor, joking that she deserved credit for not interfering when she saw the sparks flying between her boss and his assistant. Roman still worked long hours, and Olivia still challenged him when he pushed too hard. But now she did it as his partner, not just his employee. She had taken over as his chief of staff, a position that allowed her to support his work while maintaining her own identity and ambitions. She never did become a famous writer, but she discovered that some love stories were worth living instead of just writing. And in the quiet moments between meetings and mergers, when Roman would catch her eye across a crowded boardroom and smile, she knew that she had found something better than the perfect job. She had found the perfect person, too. Be imperfect with the end.